Hey everybody, welcome to Couch Dimension, our video games podcast where we're talking about games and gaming news and examining it through a legal, developer, and player lens. I'm TinyBigDude, joined as always by my co-hosts.
Captain.
And Red.
And this is the first time that we've done
this. Yeah, it was a nice intro. That was a clean intro, first try.
Absolutely clean, no technical problems whatsoever. I didn't spend 5 minutes talking to myself, but we've got a great show for you guys today. Starting us off is Captain.
Captain. I have bad news. I actually prepared a fantastic show, so that's a joke that only you're going to get now.
Oh, right. No one else knows. Okay. Well,
no one knows about the first time. Okay.
This is the first take. Captain,
You're right.
Take it away.
So, with the recent studio closures under Xbox, a lot of people have been talking about, like, why did this happen? There's been speculation, and there have been some answers that have come out from Xbox and Microsoft, and I kind of want to explore where the disconnect is happening, why some of this confusion is existing, and just kind of sift through what happened here. So I suppose I'll begin with the problems at Microsoft that they're currently facing. So,
hey, do you think that Microsoft closed all those studios and created all this, well, for lack of a better word, fallout as a tie-in with the TV show?
But tuss.
This is so strange to do the second time. Okay.
You're not trapped in a Groundhog Day scenario with me.
It feels like I'm trapped in
Groundhog Day scenario with you.
I'm trapped in Groundhog Day while also being trapped in a dimension with a couch. It's a lot.
It's rough in here, folks. It's rough in here.
It's rough. So I guess to begin, I will go ahead and say my our sources for this. It's IGN, Verge, Bloomberg, and Forbes. Just knocking those out early. So let's start with where Microsoft was before all this went down. They had been, during COVID, they had a lot of success. Another games industry just on the whole did, because you had people at home with with money to burn. And that resulted in playing video games.
Everyone spent their Trump COVID money on Xboxes and Game Pass.
Hell yeah.
I forgot we got COVID money.
Yeah, it went pretty quick.
Those Biden bucks, those Trump dollars didn't do enough. But they did experience a lot of growth, and then that plateaued pretty hard when pandemic, big air quotes, ended. So as a result, some of the decisions they made while they had that influx of money starting to come back and haunt them a little. An example is there's the Activision King Blizzard acquisition. And they had already been at work acquiring Bethesda. And by some measures hadn't even finished fully integrating them in when they decided to do this. And as a result, like, things have been really shaky at Microsoft. It's according to an article, I want to make sure I get the source right on this. Yeah, it was from IGN. Phil Spencer in The Battle for Xbox's Soul. It's a very well written article. It covers that there has been like greater corporate interest due to that, greater scrutiny on the whole on Xbox because of this big acquisition, and that has led to issues in terms of how partially it's just a money thing. And part of it is that they feel the leadership feels they're spread too thin. To quote, apologies, I want to make sure I get all my quotes correct here. Yes. Jill Braff, head of ZeniMax Studios, she said in a town hall that she had hoped the reorganization would allow for the division that also, develops Fallout and Doom to put more focus on fewer projects. Quote is saying, "It's hard to support 9 studios all across the world with a lean central team with an ever-growing plate of things to do."
Yeah, no shit,
and
dumbass.
saying,
Maybe you shouldn't have bought them all.
I will say somewhat in her... No, okay, one, true, but I will say that is the head of ZeniMax, not the head of Microsoft.
Gotcha.
She was saying, I think we were about to topple over. Which, so, if her claims are to be believed, then this was going to be an internal problem anyways, eventually, for ZeniMax. But no, yeah, it's... in the same things have been said by, I believe it was Matt Booty from Xbox said that... Last week we didn't laugh at his name.
I know, so I had to do it this week to catch everybody off guard. Never let them know your next move.
Look, I promised I'd only laugh if his name was Max Booty.
So he had said that they were spread leadership internal to Microsoft or Xbox was being spread too thin, making a strange comparison that it's like peanut butter on a piece of bread. Which, okay, for one, you just say butter, not peanut butter. That's just weird. But also, like, I like that he even bothered to eat.
He compared laying off a bunch of people and destroying livelihoods as spreading peanut butter too thin on a piece of bread.
Yeah. Which I also just like. You really didn't need to like. The metaphor wasn't necessary. I don't need an example of spreading something.
In the whole world, English speakers anyway, know the idiom "spread too thin."
Yeah, it's right there. It's right there by the Swiss cheese model.
The Swiss cheese model is in the basement collecting dust. Okay, you only know about the Swiss cheese model if you've been rummaging around down there.
Your experience is just not universal on the Swiss cheese model. Okay, so I was gonna say, so outside of the closures, it seems that Microsoft's plan is they're putting a lot of their eggs into the Game Pass basket. And this has resulted in like talking about they're still hoping to tap new markets for Game Pass. This was a kind of outline article from Forbes, where they are kind of
Spectre wept, for there were no more Game Pass subscriptions to conquer. Not Spectre, Spencer. God damn it.
Yeah, no, it's tough. I almost say Phil Spector.
Time. Do you think that he comes to work with a gun and points it at all the developers like Phil Spector did with the Ramones?
You know, that's actually a real interest. There's an interesting component you've kind of started to approach. I wasn't sure if I'd bring it up or not, but the IGN article about the battle over Xbox's soul, it's mentioned that look, Phil Spencer, at the end of the day, he's the head of it. The buck should stop with him. So, we do need to hold him responsible. But within the game industry, he's actually known as a fairly cool or chill dude.
Yeah, I'm sure. Because, look, okay. Have you ever seen They Live? Because They Live is a perfect encapsulation of capitalism and what it does to people. And like, I think that is entirely what's going on here, right? Like, you are on the side of everyone else until you are offered enough power and prestige to flip in your self-interest and represent the interests of the moneyed and the wealthy.
Well, not to get too ahead of myself, but it should be said, like, look, it's not to say it's without blame, but it was being said. According to the IGN article, it appears that this was a board decision.
Well, that's
this
my point, right?
Above.
Is that
but he still didn't fight it.
Is that you then do the bidding of the shareholders, you then do the bidding of the moneyed people. Just like in They Live, great movie, perfect one-to-one representation of life. But yeah, this case, because anytime this kind of thing happens, you get an industry like this that starts making money, and then the money guys, the businessmen with a capital B, glom onto it and tear it apart.
Yeah. So, before I get too ahead of myself, let me go ahead and say that the new markets they want to tap into are like, they're kind of hoping that by putting Game Pass on other devices and like putting it on tablets, stuff like that, they can tap into markets of people who don't want to buy consoles. Which the article points out that they're banking a lot on that. But that's not. There's some doubt that that's even a real untapped market. Because they're looking at when gaming on phones exploded and are trying to get in on that, but the type of games people are playing on their phones are fundamentally different than a lot of games being played on console. Just because someone is into phone games doesn't mean that that interest will carry over, you know?
Yeah, that's an excellent point that I haven't really thought about, because like Xbox Play Anywhere still sort of like relies on playing traditional games, and people that are playing phone games are playing them at their desk at work instead of working. They're playing Candy Crush, and you can't really do that with Gears of War 5.
Phone games tend to be simpler, more repetitive experiences and less involved. Something you can sit down and pause easily.
They should, if they really want to capitalize on that, they should just put GTA on phones.
So that I guess I should go ahead and also bring up that another plan that's being pitched is like they're discussing maybe putting Call of Duty on Game Pass. That's another weird one because yes, you might increase the user base for Game Pass. Maybe. That's a lot of money you're putting.
Yeah.
To be fair,
you're
maybe more of a long-term decision, but which is rare these days. But
you're putting guaranteed sales against subscriptions, right? And like many COD players probably already have Game Pass subscriptions, and so that's the central tension of all of this: is do you sell a $60-$70 game, or do you sell the $15 a month subscription that over the course of a year is worth like 2 to 3 $60 to $70 games?
Yeah, they're pointing out, like, do you drop $60, $70 or do you pay $200 in a year? And like you said, a lot of them have Game Pass subscriptions. How many more people is this actually going to add?
Probably not much, but they're between a rock and a hard place too, because you can't just not put it on Game Pass. You bought the damn studio and everyone's expecting it. And if you say, well, we're not going to do that with this one, then everyone that has a Game Pass subscription is going to say, well, then what is this worth? And you're going to lose subscribers, which you can't afford to do because you're not growing your subscribers the way that you need to. And so it's kind of this like vicious cycle, I think.
I can't wrap my head around putting your brand new game, like starting this trend of putting your brand new games on Game Pass.
Yeah, that was probably a mistake.
It increased the value a lot. It definitely helped in my decision to have Game Pass.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have Game Pass if it didn't.
Yeah, it's there they're going to have to figure out some better ways to monetize, which is another reason there are rumors that they might do a price hike on Game Pass. So.
Oh yeah, price hike is coming for sure because it's just like Netflix or anything else, right? The idea is that you get people to buy in at a low level. They get dependent on the product because that's where all their games are. And then you threaten to rip their whole game library away unless they pay, double the price. It's a classic tech move. And you can see it everywhere from Ubers to the other example I just said, DoorDash, yes. Netflix, etc. Yeah.
It's more like Netflix than you think. I mean, there's tons of shows that get put on Netflix with no marketing. There's games that put on Game Pass with next to no marketing.
Yeah, Hellblade 2 has not been getting a lot of marketing. It's got people a little worried that, like, how long's Ninja Theory got? But I think Ninja Theory might still have some time.
It's the same with Spotify. I don't think that Spotify has managed to turn a profit in their entire existence.
I don't know.
And it's all just dependent on that's where all my music is. So like at this point, Spotify can charge me whatever the fuck they want because what am I going to do? Go out and buy all those albums?
I went to Apple Music. But also,
Apple Music?
How does it feel to have the blood of my segue on your hands?
Oh, feels good.
Yeah, no, you're all good. I just said it was too funny to not say. Ninja Theory might be safe for now. And the reason is I'm pretty confident that none of this had to do with performance at any point. And you mentioned that some last week, Tiny. It's so when people have asked Microsoft why this has happened, why these studios have closed, they've been like, I don't think it's untrue that their leadership is stretched thin. There is obviously a point of like, you shouldn't have tried to do those acquisitions, but we are where we are. I don't think that's untrue, and obviously there's a money component.
To make a perfectly apt comparison, that is 1-to-1. My girlfriend often eats ice cream before bed, and then complains that her stomach is too full of ice cream. You just don't eat ice cream, friend.
My brother in Christ, you ate the ice cream.
My brother in Christ, you bought the studios.
And so it feels fairly straightforward. And yet there are a bunch of people still asking, why did this happen? And pointing out points of what they feel is hypocrisy. Articles been passed around from back when Xbox claimed they had no plans on closing Arcane Austin over Redfall's performance. And moreover, like you've had Xbox president Sarah Bond was asked why Tango was closed if they made an award-winning game. Being asked, shouldn't that protect a studio from closing? And she evaded the question mostly.
Oh yeah, that was like the most danced around. If you've seen the clip, oh my god. Well, studio performance means different things at different studios, and like it was just the most corporate bullshit I've ever heard.
So the thing that really pissed me off about it is like you can't have a Game Pass success and be safe. You can't have a huge game success and be safe. Whether you do good or not, you're not safe, apparently.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's kind of what I'm getting to, which is that with these things, like the Arcane Austin one, I'd argue it sucks that they closed them, but those weren't necessarily untrue statements because this didn't have anything to do with Redfall's performance. Good or bad, it was a matter of timing. It's been noted that both studios or the studios that were closed, it's more than just the two of them, but they were between projects, which means if you cut that team, you're not also getting rid of a bunch of work. They hadn't launched into their next phases, so that seems to be the biggest reason why those were chosen. Now, I say that Ninja Theory might be safe. It depends on how much how much post work goes into Hellblade.
Yeah, now there's this looming specter over your studio when you finish a game. Like,
was that a pun?
It wasn't actually. This looming Spencer over your studio.
Oh yeah, never mind. See, I messed up too.
I'm gonna start pulling guns on you in the studio.
So, and then to make it rubbed dirt in the wound for a lot of people that Microsoft said that they need more games like Hi-Fi Rush at Town Hall the day after closing Tango. And
yeah,
the thing is, I don't like. Are these are not smart things to say. The messaging is poor. Microsoft is not lying when they say they need games like and want games like Hi-Fi Rush. They still want those. It's just to say Tango will no longer be the ones making them. The disconnect that I think is happening more than anything else is that because they have been, the reasons here are not that obscure. They're not that veiled. But there's still a lot of discussion about how could Microsoft have done this. And I genuinely think the thing is, it reveals a truth in a form of security we all try to seek, which is the belief that merit protects your job. But under our current system, it simply does not. And it's not just the game industry.
The only thing that protects your job is by doing it in such an esoteric and confusing way that no one else can figure out how to replace you.
Honestly, even that isn't really all that safe anymore.
Because they'll bring in the AI.
If they want to cut you, they will cut you. And I am saying this as someone who has recently been laid off. It is a cold system, it is an emotionless system, and it is one that is focused on profits and protecting the bottom line. And that's why Sarah Bond kind of evaded the way she did. Because I think one of the worst for them, the actual worst thing they could say is anything that would affirm the idea that doing a good job will protect your job. That is fundamentally untrue, and that's the thing that you could throw in their face more than the rest of this. But I don't think throwing in their face is going to matter that much anyways. The thing I want to highlight more than anything else, and not to be a bummer about it, this is unfortunately how these things work under our current system. This is how costs get cut, layoffs are a regular occurrence. They have been and they will continue to be, because unfortunately, those cuts aren't even fully done at Microsoft. There will most likely be more. They're still buying out some positions, and other work is still being done within ZeniMax. So, and with Game Pass looking the way it is, I can guarantee we will be talking about more layoffs at Microsoft in the future.
Oh yeah, they pretty much they've almost said as much that they're going to lay off more people. Yeah, it's definitely going to happen.
The reason I bring all this up is that
is because it's a video games podcast where we talk about video game news.
What?
The reason I emphasize the capitalistic part of it is because, unfortunately, I want to see people start taking next step to realize that this isn't a Microsoft problem or a games industry problem. This is an unchecked capitalism problem. This is the way we have built our society and incentives. That is where the problem lies. And more than just like get out and vote. Like, if you want to stage boycotts, stage protest. Collective action at the end of the day is the best thing you can do.
Unionize.
That's right, gamers, unionize.
I'm forming the Gamers Union. You Now Microsoft points are worth real money. That's what we've always wanted.
Yep.
But no, your point is very well taken, Captain. And yes, like absolutely, let's see some of that Helldivers 2 energy put into something a little more productive.
I just wanted to say, like, things can feel hopeless. Can't guarantee things. Well, it might get worse before it gets better. Either way this goes, but genuinely, like, find where you can help, find things you can do. Working as a group is far more impactful than working alone. And as Tiny said, capture some of that the Helldivers community energy and try to channel that towards better things.
With that, are we ready to move to our next story?
I don't see why not.
Well, I've got another shit show to talk about, and it's not just the technical issues that going on with this podcast. It's Marvel Rivals. So the basic story here is that NetEase, the publisher of the upcoming Overwatch 3, Marvel Rivals, sent out advanced copies of the game to select content creators for a quote-unquote closed alpha that in reality was just a marketing ploy. One streamer, Brandon Siegel-Laynard, actually read his contract, good on him, and found out that it contained a non-disparagement clause, which prevented him from making critical comments about the game, including, quote, providing a subjective negative review. So presumably, if the game was objectively dog shit, then they could say so.
Looks like they lucked out there at least.
How this podcast works. If you are watching it right now,
yes,
you are under the same contract.
Yes, watching means you've consented to not providing subjective negative review of this show.
Yes,
absolutely. Yes. Yeah, we got a whole shrink wrap agreement on this whole show. But if you're watching this show, you legally owe me money. So
wait a minute, you have us pull up the stream every week.
Wait a minute. Goddamn right I do. So old Siegel took this clause public. He tweeted about it. And people got upset, obviously. And NetEase has agreed to rework the language. And the PC Gamer article that I got this from was like, you got to give it to NetEase. They walked it back. And I'm like, you absolutely do not have to give NetEase anything.
Yeah.
But, give it up for NetEase.
The thing about an NDA, which typically, a non-disclosure agreement does kind of have like in it, like, hey, you can't talk about the NDA. Like, you can't discuss the terms of the non-disclosure agreement as part of it. But you actually have to sign it for that to be effective. And in this case, it wasn't even strictly an NDA. It was just a non-disparagement agreement. So non-disparagement agreements are really interesting, and they do have a place in the world of like corporate law. They're often used between business partners because like you don't want your business partner to be talking shit about you publicly and openly. And this is actually what's at the center of the whole Mr. Beast lawsuit that you might have heard of. Is that he disparaged the group that was doing his like food sales, and they didn't really care for that. So they're suing him for millions of dollars in lost revenue. So anyways, it makes sense on a company-to-company level why you would have something like that. But when you bring it down to the level of the gamer, it is a little absurd.
Yeah.
I could totally see some suits sitting around and going like, if we give them the game, that's like making them our business partner, right?
So you don't know how right you are, because that's exactly what they've been doing, and they've been doing it for years. And guess who spearheaded the practice? Our good friends over at Bethesda. Yay!
Cool.
So this ties to a trend in gaming where you don't actually send advanced copies to real journalists. You send them to Twitch streamers and YouTubers that are fanboys, because they'll write something positive about the game, even if it's dog shit. It's a real problem in games journalism, and it is an attempt by companies to push subpar products on consumers that can't be reviewed in time to influence purchasing decisions. And there's actually a really great H-Bomber guy YouTube video titled Bethesda versus Critics, How to Save the Games Industry from like 7 years ago that covers all of this in like 20 minutes of detail. Highly recommended if you're interested.
It should, I do want to point out, just because it, I don't know if we've ever talked about it on this podcast, but Bethesda, the game studio, okay. Bethesda, the publisher, evil.
Oh, absolutely god-awful.
It's not an unknown thing in the games industry, but I don't know. I just wanted to make sure we plant our flag on that position.
But to wrap this one up, this really speaks to the state of the games industry and internet content more generally. It's harder and harder to tell what is a critical, even-handed look and what is marketing hype. This is why it's a good idea to get your gaming news from podcasts that are way too small to ever make any money advertising. Unless, of course, we hit it big, in which case, that is why it's a great idea to play World of Tanks, my favorite mobile game.
That's right, World of Tanks.
You got the voice. Somebody get World of Tanks on the phone. Red is going to cut a promo. Speaking of Red, I think you've got some more great. We're having like a really sunny, like great news day. 2 weeks in a row,
it is. Oh boy, everything is so bright, sunshiny, and happy. Yeah. So Square Enix. If you've heard of them, you've heard of them. If you haven't, I don't know where you live. They recently published their business plan for the next 3 years, and depending on what kind of gamer you are, that's either great or terrible. And we'll get into that. Let's start with their new corporate philosophy. Enrich people's own life with our help of creating precious, unforgettable experiences. And their new catchphrase must be the unforgettable experiences part, with how often it's used in the presentation. The phrase is just vague enough of an idea that it'll be echoed at every corporate event. I'm sure it'll be in all the speeches of the people who are getting promotions, and trash talk by every employee with more than 2 brain cells.
Yeah, I could definitely see like at the industry awards, working at Square Enix has been the most unforgettable experience of my life.
Yeah, I can definitely see like, oh, we accept this award. We've created such an unforgettable experience. They look directly at the camera every time.
The unforgettable experiences were the friends we made along the way.
It certainly wasn't the profits. Anyway.
Hey, look, an unforgettable experience doesn't have to be a positive one.
This is true.
You think this goes hand in hand with their NFT business plans? Maybe your unforgettable experience is losing everything on losing money all value on your rare Chocobo NFT.
That is entirely possible, though I didn't in my skim of their plan, I didn't see much about NFTs, although I think it could be snuggled in there somewhere. But speaking of that plan, how about a brief overview of it? They want to establish a developmental footprint capable of releasing titles often. They want to enable disruptive growth. They want to keep momentum, make business opportunities, become leaner, create new businesses. And they're calling this whole thing Square Enix Reboots and Awakens, which is so fucking square-coded of a name. But I don't know. Are they implying that the company's been a slumber or has been faulty and needs a reboot?
Once again, they did sell a bunch of IPs for money, specifically so they could make NFT games. I think that might be the most asleep of any of the game companies.
That's a good point.
Looking at these points, though, enable disruptive growth, keep the momentum, make business opportunity.
It's the most nothing.
I think that they paid for like a YouTube like grind set seminar and then just turned that into their corporate plan.
This is my resume.
Yes, I'm good at keeping momentum. I make business opportunities. And let me tell you,
I enable disruptive growth. I've disrupted so many industries.
Disruptive growth sounds so like like even if I try to quantify that, you can't keep disruptive going. It's in the definition.
No, you can't. You disrupt an industry, and when you shake it up and change everything, then you just do it again.
Disruptive growth. Disrupting
never
an industry is just code for making everything shittier.
Yes.
Oh,
Never quit reinventing trains.
Oh God.
While calling them dumber things and making them worse.
Yes, Iron Horse. To sum of it up, they want to shift from quantity to quality. And I'm not sure what that means for Square, but I think Captain just clued me in because I went completely blank about all the NFT games. I think I blacked that part of reality out of my mind.
Well, they didn't really make a ton. They just really wanted to. But you know, that's what this is to me? This is the Domino's rebrand they did. Remember that?
Oh yeah, when Domino's came out and they were like, our pizza was dog shit, but now it's good.
That's
That's true. And I don't know if they were releasing a bunch of bad games that often that nobody talked about, but they say they want to reach your heart with video games. So look out for people with spiky hair and people with keyblades.
I was literally about to say, is this fucking Kingdom Hearts?
And they're saying they want to do more in-house, which is I don't know how you do it in-house based on what happened. What spoiler alert, they fired some people. Anyway, but contractors are expensive, so I get it. But here's the stink that I talked about earlier. They want to shift to a multi-platform strategy. And by which I mean they're saying they want to be on Nintendo platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. They want more customers on more platforms enjoying their titles. And this is again, this is kind of what I mentioned earlier, depending on what kind of gamer you are. This has caused a bit of a stink. There's always a vocal group saying keep titles exclusive. So that would big thoughts here would be like Final Fantasy VII remakes or something. That's how you sell your system. And I mean, that's virtually how Nintendo operates 24/7. So we know it kind of works well. But I think Square has started to view Sony as a limitation in the PS5 era. Because I don't think they're happy with their sales, which a lot of games recently did not sell very well compared to previous titles. But timed or complete exclusivity, I think, is something Square just isn't working for Square anymore. I think they realize their sales. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think the $70 price tag that Sony has mandated on PlayStation 5 or PS5 games is a big factor sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
You can argue it's $10 extra, but at the end of the day, it's $10 extra for the standard version. You're paying around $100 a lot of the time if you want the special edition that has all the content.
Yeah. But the timed or complete exclusivity just isn't working for Square anymore. The timed, I feel they recognize that sales are best at release and the hype is best at release. They want to be hot and ready for every brand of gamer when their marketing machine is rolling on all cylinders.
Oh, so they want to be trashed just like Little Caesars.
Little Caesars has a place in this economy.
Little Caesars is trash.
Yeah, I think they definitely would just be better off saying Square Enix instead of unforgettable bullshit. The Little Caesars of games. Just rename yourself as Little Caesars.
Man,
I just imagine you Little Caesars delivery driver, but with Square Enix hair.
Exactly. Oh, that's such a good cross promotion.
Man, yeah. The hat is just a printout of Cloud Strife hair.
They cut your pizza with a Buster sword.
But let's get to the real bad news here. So Square would like to rebuild their European and American offices in line with their new organization in Japan. And how do they want to do this, guys?
I'm gonna guess by being really nice to everyone.
Yes, they're going to give everyone 100% raise. No, they're going to fire them. They're laying them off.
God damn it.
Andy Robinson from Video Games Chronicle reported that people who attended the internal meeting, where a lot of the material we talked about earlier was covered along with financials, say that Square president Takashi Kiryu stated that the American and European arms would be hit with layoffs. That's our favorite word on this show. Can you say layoff?
I just want a week where we don't talk about layoffs.
Well,
and I realize we choose the stories, but...
Yeah, I was saying, wouldn't it be nice if we could talk about game trailers or like, you know what I mean? Like anything else. But unfortunately, we started this podcast in the middle of a goddamn hurricane of layoffs.
Yeah. Oh God, it's terrible in the gaming market. So we don't have the numbers on this layoff yet. Staff were told it would affect publishing, IT, and the indie games division predominantly. Those affected are to be told within the week. Apparently, U.S. staff can be kicked out as early as June, and the European staff would have a 1-month consultancy period as per local employment law. Our employment law sucks over here in the U.S.
Yeah, it's not good.
So why the layoffs after the big plans on releasing on more consoles? Profits were down nearly 70% from the previous year. And what better ground to build on than freshly tilled soil after you burn down all the old growth? Apparently, those losses are tied to a lot of their canceled projects because they don't fit into their future strategies. And our technical side failed me today because we needed a cue card for Who Killed Hannibal meme, but it's Square shooting their own profits.
Yeah,
Fallout has taught me anything. It's that tainted soil is the best, or burning down civilization is the best way to start a new one.
I genuinely think it might have something to do with the NFTs, guys. I think that might have played a big role here.
Man,
what if
Square shouldn't have gambled on the NFT
all
market?
of my apes gone?
I love the idea that Square Enix never even made it to instead of making NFT games, that it was a mistranslation. They were just straight up buying apes. They were just buying the NFT.
Well, we got one more story here, and then we'll do a brief segment on what we've been playing, because I do think we owe the people like 10 to 15 minutes of content for tech problems. So I've just got one quick, fun, feel good story. God, this week's been depressing. So remember when we were talking about Helldivers last week, and there was like this whole discussion of like, oh, they're geo-locking the game, and you won't be sold in certain areas because of the PSN account thing. And we were all like really concerned about that. And then, but no, wait, we won because they walked back the PSN account requirement. Well, it turns out that they still didn't walk back the purchasing restrictions. So after gamers celebrated blowing up the Death Star of PSN accounts, the uranium debris crashed into all the fuzzy Ewoks, so to speak. I think that's a good analogy. I hope that you all agree. So yeah, it's still restricted in multiple countries from being purchased on Steam, as is Ghost of Tsushima. And I think that the God of War Ragnarok release that was recently announced will face the same problems. So what did we win, gang?
I'm a little confused about your analogy. I've never seen Star Trek.
No, that's fair. But anyways, that's enough depressing horseshit. Let's talk about video games.
Fine, cool. We're at the main episode, the meat of the episode now.
Yeah, Captain, if you want to start with one, you can, and then I've got something a little bit new today. I've got a pre-made package for my thoughts on Fallout 76, and we're going to kind of just see how that goes. I'd appreciate any feedback that the audience may have for that.
Yeah, I would like to have a moment to discuss.
Sure.
But after it plays, but I'll go with the most interesting of these because I have quite a list of things. Unemployment gives you time. And with that time, I have gone back to someone broken my house and jailbroke my 3DS. It was crazy. I just mentioned that offhand. Actually, this is a game I straight up own, but I never finished Kirby Planet Robobot. I finished the main story of it this week, and look, Kirby games are not the most difficult, but that game has a lot of, especially towards the end, a lot of fun, like inventive level design. A lot of interesting stuff happening. Sakurai really likes occasionally deciding, you know what? Now you're in a not shooter. I don't know. It's not a bullet hell, but it's I can't remember how to describe the genre of like you're in a plane over a 2D, like top down in a plane, and you're shooting things.
Hiroshima?
No. Anyway, like it sometimes it jumps genres a little in fun ways. It's very inventive, it's extremely charming. And like I do enjoy the Kirby games. I have no indicators. I haven't really given anyone an indication of that yet.
No, there's no way to tell just by looking at you.
Yeah, you can't just tell.
That's a Lady Maria over there.
Yeah, but like Star Allies was cool. I didn't hate it, but this one, like, I had a blast with the end of it. It's a cool game. I recommend checking it out if you just get the chance. It's an older one, but like, yeah, I just had a lot of fun going through it, and that they when it comes to a final boss in those games, they seem to always do it up. They do a bunch of work. It's just charming. Overall, yeah, not a hard experience, but a very fun experience.
Cool. Well,
I know we've got your thing, so I'll talk about other stuff maybe next week when I've got a little bit more time.
Okay, and we'll see how much time we end up with. Like I said, we owe the people a little bit of time on account of the technical hiccups.
No, that's part of the show.
But I actually have not played my fair share of Kirby games, and I need to do that.
You know what? For your sake, or I'd say if you're going back and if you want to get into any of them, I think what I'd recommend for you is either like maybe play one of the, like I think it was Return to Dreamland, got a port to the Switch. If you don't want to spend money, I know that you have access to the N64 emulator on your Switch. Check out Crystal Shards.
Sweet.
It's there.
I haven't played Kirby in a while. You know what? Play the best Kirby game ever made.
I don't know if it's the best ever made, if only because, you know, some gameplay stuff is a little dated, but it's still a very fun game.
Was that the one that we used to play as kids in Definitely Not Our Shared Home?
Yeah, it's when I came over to visit your brother.
Yeah, Tiny, it's absolutely the game that you and me played in our not shared home.
Perfect.
You know what? Michael Huey makes a good point. Nightmare in Dreamland is also very good. There are a lot of really good Kirby games. Before we move on, can I say one quick thing? That it's not like a big story this week or anything. It was just a thing I want to mention. I have nowhere else to put it. Technically, it is a thing I played very shortly.
Yeah.
I was waiting for permission. I wanted.
Yes, God,
right, Michael
not
Huey.
me.
I did play the last Kirby game, which is Smash Bros. Ultimate, because playing Kirby made me go, man, I want to get back into Smash Brothers, because you can feel that they were both made by Sakurai and his team. The DNA is very strong. Anyways, just wanted to say, new technique for adapting or emulating N64 games exists now, called recompilation. And it's really, really neat and a lot faster than the old method of decompiling things that took, like, in some cases, years. And I messed around a little and like played Majora's Mask as like an exe file on my laptop. It was really neat. And
that's awesome.
It opens up those games to be able to have like shaders and things like that. A video I watched about, like, the thing that reminded me is that they had some footage of Crystal Shards with just like some RTX effects added, and it actually fits really well. Like, because it doesn't change the textures of the models, it just adds some enhanced lighting and stuff.
And if only there was some kind of community that modified game content.
I know.
They'd
But
love
I wanted to shout that out because I feel like that might come back in the future as like this is amazing news for emulation for N64 games. And it was really neat to be able to do that in a very emulation for N64 has never been the best. And so playing a lot of that stuff like especially on a laptop or a computer, like you're dropping frames, things are a little laggier than they should be. Not like, no, this is smooth.
Cool.
Yeah, it's wild.
Okay, and that is the end. But yeah, I forgot. That was an interesting thing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we're going to roll this package, and we'll see you guys in like 6 minutes. So last week marked my second attempt at getting into Fallout 76, spurred on by some friends picking up the game and inviting me to explore the wasteland with them. Unlike my first solo attempt, the game has managed to stick, so here are my initial thoughts on Fallout 76. Overall, I would say that the experience is positive. This game has come a long way since launch and now occupies the space of playable game and not tech demo. We'll start with the core gameplay loop. In Fallout 76, you'll undertake missions. During those missions, you'll gather guns, materials, and consumables. Then you'll go back to your camp and do inventory management and base building before trekking back out to continue questing. When playing with friends, you'll typically find yourself grouping up for the questing part of the loop and then splitting apart as you go home and sort through the spoils. This makes for a great multiplayer experience. While I love the high-octane multiplayer of games like Helldivers 2 or Destiny, I also like to be able to play games where I can kick back and have a beer while hanging out with my buddies. That is this game. You don't have to be hyper-focused the entire time for fear of ruining the collective mission. In fact, most of the time you'll be able to take it pretty easy, with bouts of intense gameplay where you need to focus up. Fallout 76 is also an enjoyable solo experience, and playing alone has its own upsides. For one, when playing with a group, you'll likely miss out on most of the story, because you don't really want to bog down everyone else's quests by reading all the terminal entries. So when you play alone, you get to fully explore the story that 76 has to offer. On the subject of story, let's pivot to some of the game's shortcomings. While Fallout 76's quest narratives can be compelling and whimsical, they are also not presented in the typical Fallout fashion. You won't spend much time interacting with NPCs. Instead, you'll be learning most of the story through holotapes and computer terminals. Additionally, one of the core pillars of previous Fallout storytelling is completely absent from 76, and that is player choice. Unlike prior games in the series, 99% of NPCs don't have dialogue options, and every quest is linear. This means no speech checks, no faction loyalties, and no karma system. This points to 76's most obvious flaw: the compromises made to accommodate multiplayer. And I see why these compromises were made. Multiplayer RPGs are difficult beasts, and adding new players means more moving parts that the developers have to consider. For example, assume that my personal favorite Fallout game, Fallout New Vegas, had multiplayer. What if one player were to side with the Legion and the other sided with the NCR? How would you resolve that situation while ensuring that those players could have a cohesive experience playing together? I think that poses some unique challenges that could have resulted in innovative gameplay and storytelling. Instead, Bethesda opted to simply remove the complexity and pave the way for multiplayer. This problem compounds when you consider that 76 isn't just a 4-player adventure, it's a 24-player sandbox. This means that you can't have big set pieces like the Battle of Hoover Dam, because what would happen if a random player entered the fray and started engaging in random acts of PvP? The worst thing about this is how unnecessary it is. I cannot stress enough how unimportant interaction with random players has been to my overall 76 experience. Given I'm only level 20, but I almost never see other players around in the massive game world, and when I do, they've never been hostile. And even if they were to attack, as far as I can tell, the only benefit of killing another player is that you can loot their scrap. Only some types of scrap are rare and therefore valuable, and there's no way of knowing what scrap players have on them at any given time. This makes PvP more of a waste of time than a valid gameplay approach. Not to mention that the vast gulf in player level and experience would likely make most PvP encounters entirely one-sided. This is especially disappointing when I can think of numerous ways Bethesda could have incorporated traditional Fallout storytelling in this environment. For example, imagine having players pledge to one of several factions, and then having in-game events where those factions could fight over resources and rewards. Or a system where your karma is dependent on your tendency to attack other players, similar to the mental status system in GTA Online. There were ways to keep the heart of Fallout alive in 76, and Bethesda pretty clearly ignored them. All this means that Bethesda gutted much of Fallout's DNA from 76 to accommodate a feature that is rarely used and minimally important. Yeah, it's cool to have public events in the open world where players can come together and tackle a task, but that's a small upside to the numerous penalties 76 suffers from having 24-player lobbies baked into its core. Ultimately, 76 is a good time, and it shows a glimpse of how fun a full-fledged 4-player co-op Fallout could be. I think it's possible for studios to create multiplayer RPGs that engage each member of the party in the story and allow for collaborative decision-making. I mean, just look at Baldur's Gate 3 and how it tackles some of these same issues. If Todd and the gang can take the lessons learned from 76 and incorporate them into a mainline title with a more limited multiplayer functionality, then I think Bethesda would have Game of the Year material on their hands. But we all know that isn't going to happen, so let's just go back to wasting ghouls with our buddies. All right. Well then, we're back from the pocket couch dimension. And everyone here learned a little bit about Fallout 76. Michael Kiwi says, I think you described Elder Scrolls Online. Unfortunately, Elder Scrolls Online is too dog shit for me to even go near.
I'm one day going to attempt to brave it again, but it's never clicked with me. But I put too much money in. I at least owe it to myself to give it one more try. I used to have a coworker who really enjoyed it, who recommended I try it again. So we'll see. But I'm more likely to get into 76. So I want to ask you, with that review, because I played a little, not close to launch, but closer than this, of 76. And saw I saw some more players out there. I'm a little surprised your lobby, you haven't seen as many players, given that I think it and all the Fallouts have gotten increased traffic due to the show.
Oh, it's not that the lobbies are empty. Let me be clear about that. It is not that these lobbies are empty. The lobbies are typically full.
Oh, it's just they're spread out. Yeah.
Yes, there's 24 people in this huge world, and so you never really get the chance to come across them. And like I said, when you do, it's not super interactive. Now, the exception to that is the public events, which are cool, but I think there's a way to do a high player count public event without necessarily having a consistent 24 player lobby.
Yeah. Do you so what I wanted to ask you is that, because it feels like as the game has continued to exist, and when I played even back then, like even at that time, it wasn't super PvP heavy, but I think it was more than what it is now. Do you feel it's a deliberate move? And how do you feel in comparison to things like No Man's Sky, where like that's another one where, yeah, PvP is available if you really want to, but the incentives to do so are just so low that most people don't bother.
I think the main difference here is that No Man's Sky was never advertising itself as a PvP game. Yeah. Whereas 76, their whole gimmick was, hey, you can nuke people in the lobby with you, and isn't that cool? And like nuking people does functionally like very little. it kind of creates like a spawn area for certain enemies, but beyond that, not much. And there's not really any reason to. So, I think that at launch, it was probably more PvP focused because there was less to do. But now that there is a pretty good catalog of quests, I think most people spend their time with quests or public events.
Do you think, because when I was watching your thoughts there, it occurred to me that, do you think it would, not a simple fix, but at least like a Band-Aid you could put on that is maybe make PvP either specific areas, like, I can't think of, I hate that this is my point of reference, but the Dark Zone from The Division, or have an arena or something. Do you think that would fix some of those issues?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that if you built the game around PvP to the point that, like, I could join the cons and you could join the NCR, and like we would have beef then and like legitimate reason to fight over territory, then I think that would be a different game and probably a more fun game. I think that the biggest problem with Fallout 76 is that it just didn't need to be that big of a multiplayer experience.
Yeah. The consensus I've heard over the years is like, man, it'd be nice to just have like a 4-player Fallout, which you bring up. I think I said earlier, but just want to reiterate that was a really clean video.
Thank you.
Appreciate you putting in that work.
Yeah. Hoping to do more of those as time goes on. And if you guys have any you want to do, I can totally help with them.
You have kind of ignited a spark. I wouldn't necessarily mind doing that, though. I probably need to talk about games I'm playing moving forward. There's some part of me that, like, man, I just want to go back and give like a glowing review to Outer Wilds just so I can talk more about Outer Wilds. But I can't do that because to talk about some of the best moments also spoil some of the best moments.
Man, you really put the impetus on me to talk about Baldur's Gate 3. That game hasn't sold enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would love to see, Red, what you would do with that format with Dragon's Dogma.
Oh, okay.
I actually, well, I think it's better that we maybe just do it as a discussion, like a book club thing, but I wouldn't mind hearing your thoughts on Prey.
Yeah, I thought about putting one together for Prey. I might do that as a separate video for the channel, because I do have quite a bit of Prey game capture that we're going to play as we talk about it, so that people can kind of see what we're talking about. Which, just to note, that video and any subsequent videos like it will be available on the YouTube separate from the podcast. So if you just want to go watch the packages, the reviews, and the segments, that'll be available to you. Well, fellas, I think that we've given the people what they want. We've given them what they need, despite the technical difficulties that we may have experienced, but definitely didn't.
I don't think we gave them what they want. We gave them what they need.
Well,
I would appreciate being given fuel, perhaps fire.
Well, I can't give you that which you desire, okay? You're going to have to go get that on your own. But that's our show, everybody. Thanks for listening. Captain, where can the hordes of feral ghouls that I have now summoned to the podcast find us?
They can find us in the sewers of Washington, D.C., but also they can find us on YouTube at TinyBigDude, as well as on podcast platforms Spotify, Apple, and Amazon by searching for Couch Dimension.
You can also find us on Twitch every Tuesday at 5:15 p.m. Central Standard Time, because we are trapped here by a wizard.